Chapter 4. Migration. Number 1. Snake Slipway. From the desk of Marcellus Pye, Castle Alchemist. Dear Marcia, work has now begun on the great chimney, and I suggest that with a view to denaturing the two-faced ring as soon as possible, we consider opening the great chamber of alchemy and physic. Of course, the fire cannot be started until the chimney is reinstated, but the sooner we get going on the work below ground, the better. To this end, I would request that my apprentice, crossed out, Septimus, commence his month working with me as soon as possible, crossed out, is convenient. Yours, Marcellus. Marcia read the letter while she drank her second cup of breakfast coffee. She handed it to Septimus, who was finishing his porridge. Well, she said, how about going to Marcellus today? Septimus had been looking forward to the break-in routine. He was doing the advanced analytical deciphering module of his course and was finding it very tedious. Might as well, he said, not wishing to appear too eager and hurt Marcia's feelings. Off you go and pack then, Marcia said briskly. Okie dokie. Marcia watched Septimus jump up from his chair and scoot out of the kitchen. She was not looking forward to the next 4 weeks without him. Up in his room, Septimus was having trouble closing his backpack. Toothbrush? He looked up and saw Marcia's head peering around the doorway. Yes, he grunted, and my comb, just like you said. Marcia's gaze wandered around Septimus's room. It was not big. Apprentices' rooms in the Wizard Tower were always small, but it was, she was pleased to see, well organized and businesslike. The shelves were stacked with labeled boxes and papers from Septimus's various magical projects and assignments. They also boasted a line of small lapis pots, a midwinter feast gift from her, which contained his slowly growing collection of charms and talismans. There was a large shiny black desk under the window with 6 legs, which Septimus called the insect, on which were perched a pot of pens and stack of unused paper. Marcia avoided looking at the desk. With its spindly, hairy legs and its shiny, flat, black top, it put her in mind of a giant cockroach. Instead, she glanced up at the dark blue ceiling with the constellations that Septimus had painted when he first arrived. The silver stars were still bright, and they shone in the sunlight that was pouring through the window. Marcia suppressed a sigh. She really was going to miss Septimus. Her gaze alighted on a folded pile of green woolen cloth, with a telltale purple flash peeping out from it. You've forgotten your spare apprentice robes, she said. It's the new set that arrived this morning. I ordered them specially. Well, no, I haven't forgotten, Septimus said a little awkwardly. He pulled the last backpack buckle closed and heaved the pack onto the floor, where it landed with a hefty thud. Marcia jumped. Septimus was getting very big and clumsy, she thought. Everything he did sounded so loud. I suppose you don't have room, she said. I'll send a wizard over with them later. Actually, Septimus said, I won't be needing them. Marcia sighed. You cannot possibly wear the same robes for a whole month, Septimus. No, I know, so I'll send them over. Marcia, no. I won't need them. I'll be wearing my alchemy apprentice robes. Marcia nearly choked. You'll be wearing what? My alchemy robes. You did agree that I would be Marcellus's apprentice for a whole month. I agreed to no such thing, sputtered Marcia. I agreed to send my apprentice to help him for 1 month, and that is an entirely different matter altogether. And during that month you will remain my apprentice, Septimus. You will not be an alchemy apprentice. That's not how Marcellus sees it, muttered Septimus. I don't give a brass baboon how Marcellus sees it, snapped Marcia. I shall send the spare robes over later, and I expect you to wear them. Septimus suppressed a sigh. He wished Marcia and Marcellus would stop fighting over him. I thought you might say that, he said. Half an hour later, Septimus was perched on the old oak chest by the purple front door waiting for Marcia. In the past, he would have found something interesting to read and sprawled comfortably on the squashy purple sofa, while Marcia finished fussing about in her study. But now the dumpy ghost of Miss Jilly Jin, the ex-chief hermetic scribe, occupied Marcia's once much-loved sofa. Jilly Jin had unfortunately died on Marcia's sofa a few months previously, and because ghosts must remain for a year and day in the place where they entered ghosthood, Marcia had 9 long months of Jilly Jin's company still to go, before the ghost was free to move on. As a new ghost, Jilly Jin was a bright figure. Her dark blue robes had a crisp outline, and the expression on her round face was easy to see. She looked annoyed, as though she were about to tell someone off. To Septimus and Marcia's relief, Jilly-Jin had not yet spoken, although she was now reacting to what went on around her and had even managed to get rid of her recent companion on the sofa, Septimus's genie, Jim Nee. One evening, Jim Nee, who had been hibernating there, had suddenly got up and sleepwalked off to the spare bedroom, where he now lay snoring. Jilly-Jin's dark little eyes stared unblinkingly at Septimus. It was most disconcerting, and it had not occurred to him before that ghosts do not need to blink. He was relieved when Marcia appeared. "Ready?" she asked. "Yep." Septimus picked up his backpack. Marcia glared at Jilly-Jin. "Come along, Septimus. Let's get out of here." Marcia and Septimus stood silently on the silver spiral stairs as they gently revolved, taking them down through the wizard tower. Septimus breathed in the scent of magic, which was stronger than usual due to the extra energy being expended keeping the two-faced ring secure in the sealed cell. Down and down the stairs took them, past each floor where the magical business of the day went purposefully on as the extraordinary wizard and her apprentice glided quietly by. As they stepped off the stairs onto the soft floor of the great hall, Marcia, loath to give up tutor mode just yet, stopped and said, "You haven't seen the sealed cell, have you?" "No, I haven't." "Time you did, I think. The two-faced ring is due a check before we go." The long tunnel that led to the sealed cell was reached through the seal lobby, a small room behind the spiral stairs. Outside the lobby, 2 wizards were on guard. Marcia was taking no chances. Inside the sealed lobby, the atmosphere was hushed. The silver-walled room was suffused with magical purple light that shone from the seal covering the door to the tunnel. Its polished silver walls and rounded corners were designed to confuse any entities or live spells that might escape. It certainly confused Septimus. When he walked in, he had the odd experience of seeing about 5 or 6 most peculiarly shaped versions of himself come in, and when Marcia closed the door behind them, it felt as though he were in the middle of a purple bubble. Inside the lobby, a wizard stood staring at the seal to the tunnel, watching for any changes that would indicate a disturbance on the other side. Seal watch was a boring task, requiring little skill but a lot of concentration, and it was not a popular duty. A rotation of half-hourly shifts was kept, which used up a lot of wizards every 24 hours. Marcia approached the watcher. "I have come to do an inspection. If you would like to stand aside, please." There was nothing that Thomas in Time, the seal watch wizard, would have liked better. She stepped to one side and shook her head. The flickering lights made her feel nauseous and gave her a thumping headache. It was a horrible job. "I am taking my apprentice with me to inspect the sealed cell," Marcia said in a low voice. "You are to remain on guard. If we do not exit within 10 minutes, I authorize you, for security, to reseal the door." Septimus glanced at Marcia in surprise. That seemed a little drastic, he thought. "Very well, Madam Marcia," whispered Thomasin, and then, "Shall I watch your backpack, apprentice?" "Oh, thank you." Septimus shrugged off his backpack, and it fell to the floor. "Ouch!" gasped Thomasin. "My foot!" "Shh!" shushed Marcia. "Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry," Septimus apologized. "Really, Thomasin, it's only a little backpack," said Marcia. "Come along, Septimus." Marcia held her hands out about 1 inch above the shimmering seal, concentrating hard. Suddenly she pushed her hands through and pulled them rapidly apart, unzipping the seal as she did so, to reveal a narrow silver door. Marcia pushed the door open and squeezed through. "Come on, Septimus, quickly." Septimus slipped inside, and Marcia closed the door with a soft kerlunk. She pressed her hand onto its smooth surface, and a temporary seal flashed across like purple lightning. Then she took a lamp from a hook beside the door, lit it, and set off. Septimus followed. Lamp held high, Marcia walked along the sloping brick-lined tunnel that snaked down to the sealed cell, which was buried in the bedrock below the wizard tower. They walked quickly, the sound of their footsteps absorbed by the thin clouds of magic hanging around the tunnel. Every 7 yards Septimus saw a small door set into the tunnel wall, beyond which he knew was a chamber used for storing all manner of potentially troublesome objects. Septimus was excited. He knew how the sealed cell worked, and he had even, in the first year of his apprenticeship, made a small model of it, but he had never actually been to the end of the tunnel and seen it, let alone been inside. The sealed cell was the most secure place in the wizard tower. It was used for imprisoning the most dangerous and powerful magical objects, entities, spells, and charms. Its last occupant had been Septimus's genie, Jim Nee, securely confined until he had agreed to do Marcia's bidding. But now it was the two-faced ring that languished behind the tiny door to the sealed cell at the very end of the tunnel. For more effective use of the sealing magic, this door was only 3 feet high, and even narrower than the entrance door. Not all previous extraordinary wizards had actually been able to fit through it. Dom Daniel himself had once got stuck, much to his then-apprentice's amusement, a memory that Alther still cherished. What the door lacked in height and width it made up for in thickness. It was, like the great doors into the wizard tower, made from solid silver, which shone through the misty purple haze of the seal that encased the door. Marcia placed her lamp on a small shelf beside the door. Then she put her hand into the purple, and with a deft flick of her wrist she broke the seal. She took 3 small silver keys from her extraordinary wizard belt and placed them in 3 keyholes, one at the top of the door, one at the foot, and one in the middle. Marcia turned the middle key, and Septimus heard 3 old-fashioned barrel locks rotate in unison. The door swung open with a small squeak. Marcia lifted off the long pair of protected forceps, known as the barge poles, that hung on a hook beside the door, picked up her lamp, and squeezed through the narrow opening into the cell. Septimus quickly followed. With the door closed, the lamplight turned the dark space, which was lined in 2-inch thick solid silver, into a sparkling, shining jewel, but its brilliance did not disguise the fact that the sealed cell was tiny. Septimus felt sorry for Jim Nee, although it was, he supposed, better than the inside of a silver-lined bottle. In fact, it felt not unlike being inside a very big silver bottle, for the shining walls were molded to the rounded contours of the end of the tunnel. Set into the curved wall was a wide shelf, in the middle of which was the container that held the two-faced ring, the bound box. It was a small black box made of layers of ebony, interleaved with silver and secured with silver bands. Holding the barge poles in front of her, Marcia advanced upon the box, rather as one might approach a small but deadly snake. Suddenly she gasped and said a very rude word. "Oops! Shouldn't have said that. Look at this, Septimus." Septimus peered over Marcia's shoulder. Erupting through the bound box, like a nasty green boil, was the two-faced ring. Marcia pounced, striking at the ring like a mongoose. She stabbed the barge poles into the boil on the box, and held them up triumphantly. "Got it!" At the end of Marcia's forceps, the two-faced ring glittered angrily, its evil green faces glaring at them. Septimus looked away. He felt as though the faces could actually see him. "I'm glad they're not real," he said with a shiver. The sealed cell's peculiar echo whispered his words back to him. "Real, real, real." Marcia flipped open the box and dropped the ring back in. Septimus imagined he could hear a stream of curses as the metal hit the wood. Marcia slammed the lid closed and began securing the bands around the box. "They will be soon at this rate," she said grimly. "Marcellus will have to get a move on. Move on, move on, move on." Septimus was shocked. "You mean those 2 wizards might actually come to life?" "Life, life, life." Marcia put her fingers on her lips to shush him. She muttered a new lock for the box. "Let's go," she said. "Go, go, go." Septimus was more than happy to agree. He clambered out and waited for Marcia, while she backed awkwardly out of the narrow doorway, then slammed the door shut with a satisfying thunk, and hung up the barge poles. Back in the lobby, Marcia looked quite pale. "Madam Marcia, are you all right?" asked Thomasin. Marcia nodded. "Fine," but her hands were trembling as she sealed the door to the tunnel. Marcia was angry with herself. She realized she had delayed opening the great chamber of alchemy dangerously long. Like all wizards, Marcia had sworn an oath at her induction to abjure all things alchemical, and she took it seriously. It had been a difficult decision to allow Marcellus to light the fire once more, in order to denature the two-faced ring. And even though she knew it was the only way to destroy the ring, the lighting of the fire frightened her, and she had hesitated to begin. It was a huge step for a wizard to take, and before the chamber was opened, Marcia had wanted to understand what she was doing. However, the more she tried to find out about the fire, the less she understood. Nothing quite made sense. So many documents were missing. So much seemed to have been altered, and she had been left with an unsettling impression that something was missing. Something big. But now, whatever her fears, Marcia knew she could wait no longer. Septimus shouldered his backpack and walked across the great hall with Marcia. "Did you mean that about the 2 wizards?" he asked. "Could they really come back to life?" Marcia sighed. "It is a possibility. That is all. The dark domain has theoretically given it the power, which is why we are keeping it so securely." "So, could it happen soon?" No, Septimus, these things take years." Septimus felt relieved. Marcellus won't take that long to get the fire going, he said. Hildegard Pigeon, sub-wizard, but soon to be an ordinary wizard, stepped out from the porter's cupboard. "Still on door duty, Hildegard?" asked Marcia. "I thought you were up at search and rescue now." Hildegard smiled. "Next month, Madam Marcia, but I enjoy it here. I have a letter for you. Mr. Randall left it this morning." "Did he? Well, thank you, Hildegard." Septimus thought Marcia went a little pink. Hildegard Pigeon handed an impressive envelope with a red and gold border to Marcia. Septimus noticed Hildegard's delicate blue lace gloves. Hildegard was self-conscious about her fingertips, which had been damaged when the thing inhabiting her had chewed them. They reminded Septimus how destructive the dark was, and how important it was to get rid of the two-faced ring. The huge silver doors to the wizard tower had swung open. Marcia was dallying on the top step, reading Milo's note. Septimus was impatient to be off. "Come on, Marcia," he said. Yes, in a moment." Septimus set off down the steps. Marcia put the letter carefully in her pocket and followed. "It shouldn't take too long to open a dusty old door to a chamber," she said. Septimus waited for Marcia at the foot of the steps. "I think opening the great chamber of alchemy and physic might be a bit more complicated than that, and anyway it hasn't got a door." "All the better then," said Marcia. "I shall just declare it open, and then I'll shoot off. I shall be busy this evening." Septimus had the distinct impression that Marcia was expecting to cut some kind of ceremonial ribbon, and then go home, but he knew better than to say anything. He set off quickly. Marcia hurried across the courtyard, trying to keep up with her apprentice. As she hurried through the great arch, her wizard induction vow came back to her. Marcia sighed. She felt as though she were on her way to betray the castle.